I am very honored today to be joined on a call with Tim Hewlin, who is the founder of Daisium. Thank you for joining me, Tim.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
You've had some really good successes with your business in the last quarter. And I wondered if I could ask you some questions about how us doing a few strategy sessions together has helped you do that and what you've achieved, if that is okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, then, well, maybe just tell us a very little bit about Daisium. So what is Daisium? What does Daisium do?
So Daisium is a smartphone app, and we count days for people in different tax jurisdictions. So if you're one of these people who's leaving the UK, moving overseas, you're going to be restricted to the number of days you can spend back in the UK, and also you probably need to make a certain number of days in a new jurisdiction so that you're tax resident there. So this is a tax compliance tool, essentially.
Cool, very cool. And before that, you were a commercial pilot?
Yes, 22 years up until COVID, flying around all over Europe and North Africa.
Okay, so you and I have done some strategy sessions together to help with vision and planning. Before we did those kind of vision sessions, what were you focusing your efforts on, and how was it going at the time?
So we were focusing on the hypothesis that has certainly proven to be somewhat true,
Mm-hmm.
which was that high net worth individuals who we target won't spend time talking to Tim about buying his software. However, if their advisor says you should use Daisium, then they're likely to take that advice. And so our route to market was to create a whole network of partners so that in their process of looking after and advising their clients, they will, when the topic of day counting and record keeping inevitably comes up, they say, this is fantastic tool called Daisium. We've partnered with them. You should go and use it. And then they introduce me at that point, which
Mm-hmm.
has proved to be somewhat successful, although quite a slow process.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to figure out, well, how do we scale this company? Because it's quite tech intensive. There's a big spend and a big burn on cash reserves for building the tech. So we needed to go faster, basically.
Cool. Okay, so that leads nicely into the next question. So what kind of challenges were you facing with either offer, audience, or kind of sales process before doing some planning?
So sales, the process of sales was something that I haven't really done before. So yeah, I guess I fall into the category of kind of startup entrepreneur. I had an idea, I built a product, assembled a team, and then sales was the next things on the list. So I was pretty inexperienced in that, and certainly. I think I struggled with just the sort of wrapping my head around the numbers and creating a funnel and how many people you need to pour in the top before you get anything out the bottom was something that was a bit mind-boggling and needed breaking down.
Yeah, I think that's a common challenge for business owners. We're very vision driven, very kind of future focused and ideas driven. So like actually filtering that vision and those ideas down into numbers that make sense into a plan can feel quite overwhelming, challenging, and something that we like to put off. So what stood out in our conversations that helped you either get clarity or shift focus?
So I think the biggest thing for me was the question that you asked of what does Tim need out of all of this?
Mm,
So you would assume if you're going to start a software company, you need thousands, millions of users, and we know we're not in the millions of category because we're a premium product. So certainly the thousands of users we need to get to, but actually asking, well, what is it? What does Tim need from it financially every month or every year to get to a point of stability was kind of like a nice milestone to reach. Because if we can get there, then that feels more manageable, and then wow, that would be less stressful. And it feels as though you're sort of, ticking milestones off the list by getting there. So that was quite a kind of a fundamental milestone to shoot for, I think, to start with. It broke down the whole, enormity of it all.
yeah, and why that's obviously something that we talk about a lot. Like, how's the business going to work for you, and being sensibly selfish in your business. How did that How did that change your thinking about the business, or how did it change how you felt about the business? Being asked that question, what does the business actually need to do for you, and maybe what were you thinking before that? Like, how was you planning? How were you setting goals? What was driving your efforts?
I think it was like going from basically zero or a few customers,
Mm.
burning money fast, and then somehow looking back at it now, expecting it all just to work out and it to start selling itself and revenue to come in, and I'll just get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a big void in, well, how actually are you going to go and set about doing that?
I think this is a common learning process for us business owners, and also block for a lot of business owners, is like when you start your business, you kind of just think, I'm excited by this idea. It has potential to be quite big. Let's get to action. And obviously, you're driven on that first wave of action by excitement and the desire to be your own boss, and creativity to bring this thing into reality. And then I think very quickly what happens is we realize, this thing, there's a lot of work that has to go in to make this work, and it's probably not just going to be an overnight success. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what does success look like? And it just feels like this kind of insurmountable wall. And I think that actually thinking about what you want for your business and for the business to do to just give you a decent lifestyle, or for it to be worth it for you, can actually help you make a lot of sense of that, as opposed to being pulled in the, I need to be the next Airbnb, or I need to be the next Gymshark. You kind of like, well, actually, is that what I really want? And what, so I think it helps you get clarity on that and make it feel less overwhelming.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think there's a lot of talk about sort of work-life balance. And I still kind of question whether or not that's even achievable up until you get the point where you can basically pay your bills at home. Because it feels like, the world's on fire and you just have to go about doing things as fast as possible to figure out how do you get this thing under control again. But yeah, by having that, well, how do I get to just a place where I can pay my bills, take a breath and go, right now, how do we begin to scale it? I think it was a sort of like an important place to get to, which I've not really heard people talking about before. It's always been either, I'm an entrepreneur with this massive business and I've got fantastic work-life balance. And everyone looks at them and goes, well, how the hell do you do that? Or they're just broken and very little in between. But getting to that stage of stability, I think, is an important one.
Yeah. And I think the actual harsh reality is most business owners are in that struggling phase. Most aren't in the, we see the few on social media that are absolutely smashing it. The reality isn't, and the data shows us this, is that most business owners are stressed, working too many hours, not taking home enough money, often through choice. They keep pushing it back into the business because they're chasing this never-ending goal, but not giving themselves a lifestyle. You mentioned like focusing down on a specific audience. I remember our conversations, you had 3 or 4 or 5 potential clients, brackets of client, but you mentioned that you kind of focused down on that 5K audience. And I know we talked a lot about that. How did narrowing down on them change things?
So 2 things, well, 3 things really. Good for the business because you're getting chunks of 5K.
Yep.
You're also, by focusing in, you're able to then learn more about those people rather than spreading yourself too thinly. So even though you have less conversations, the conversations you do have are deeper, and you can begin to see the themes with them. And also just fundamentally dealing with people who have a bigger budget means that they have deeper pockets. And actually, comparatively, what we found was that someone spending 5K on our product gives them an enormous amount of value for a small percentage of their disposable income or budget or whatever you want to call it. Unlike £500, where more of those clients have been much more demanding, have taken up over the months more of our time in support and help and everything else, and don't seem to be quite as happy as the people who at the other end of the scale. So that's kind of been interesting to understand as well.
And how did you come to the conclusion that, or how did the planning process help you come to the conclusion that that was where you should focus your efforts? Because I remember that you were focusing on multiple potential customers, and we kind of concluded by going through your planning process that perhaps that's not the best focus. What kind of led you to focus on those?
Well, the 5K thing was kind of working. And when we kind of dug into that, it makes sense, doesn't it? That before you're going to do something at low cost, high volume, that's a whole systems infrastructure that needs to be built. And it's really hard to do until you know more about your audience and more about your product. And you've actually done the sort of in the weeds, the manual process of it. So it made sense to sort of double down on what was already working, because not only was that financially beneficial for the business, but it also meant that we could understand the market, the product, and then later on come back to scaling it out more widely and more automated.
Cool. Okay. So you've had a really good kind of quarter. Can you share what you've achieved in this quarter?
Yeah, we've had our best quarter ever. We did 25 grand on the first quarter, which is significantly better than what we've done previously. It had all been very sporadic, up and down. So that's our best quarter so far. We've onboarded 5 new partners who are coming online now.
Love it. You mentioned getting validation from an investor. What did they say, and what does that mean for you driving the business forward?
Yeah, what my investor sort of acknowledged was that, well, we've now fundamentally based on the last quarter, can safely say that we've found a product and we've got it to market to the targeted demographic, and they're willing to pay for it and be very happy with it. So that's kind of like a really big validation. So now we can begin to scale that and do more of that by automating systems.
When you've got a new product or service, there's so many potentials with it. It's all exciting, but I think the challenge is choosing what not to pursue and choosing what few things to pursue. I think it's so easy to just go, I'm going to try and do everything. I'm going to try and every possible route to market. And then you really limit your progress because you're trying to do loads of things instead of doing a few things really well. And yeah, partnership seems to be a no-brainer for you. And 25K in a quarter isn't bad, is it, for a relatively new service?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd sort of done that level before, but it had just been so sporadic. But now we're just getting into a rhythm with that. And then this next quarter is already on target to exceed that. So yeah, it feels like we're up and running now.
So thinking back, what do you think would have happened or not happened if you hadn't got a bit of help from people outside of the business, just with like thinking and planning?
I think it would have been a pretty stressful, bit of a dark time potentially, because you've got this product and people are saying, this is great. Whenever we talk to people, this has always been the case with this product. Everyone said, it's amazing that you solved this problem. But the actual practicality of getting it in front of people and getting it to market is an entirely different thing. So you definitely need to dip into people with some expertise and a bit of a sense check, bit of a morale boost as well. There's an element of coaching with all of this.
Yep.
To sort of reassurance. There's a whole bunch of imposter syndrome and all the other good stuff that goes on right now. So yeah, having people to talk to and help you along the way, just give you some structure and strategy is a really powerful thing, and that's just shown by what we've been able to achieve in one quarter of dedicated, consistent effort in one specific direction.
Yeah, I had a chat with a client of ours last week, and he talked a lot about how lonely it is often in business, like all this pressure we put on ourselves, and we're playing roles at home, we're partners, we're parents, and then in the workplace, we're the leader, so we're always playing this role of being a certain leader, and it can be quite lonely. Why do you think it works so well having or talking to somebody external of your business? Because obviously you've got people in your business. Why do you think it works so well just having conversations with people that are outside of it?
I think two things. One, it makes you articulate what it is you do to a stranger in inverted commas. So you have to get really good at explaining things, and then also, ask you questions. So you have to clarify what it is you're doing. And then on the other side of it, they'll see businesses going through this and making the same mistakes. And, when you start the business, you don't really know what you're doing. There isn't really a playbook for every single business. Businesses are different, and yet we all seem to make the same mistakes consistently. So having somebody available to point those errors out so that you don't have to go through them is a logical thing. But for some reason, a lot of people seem to think you just got to go through this by yourselves. Make up the same mistakes, which is not efficient or pleasant.
No. What would you say to another business owner then that's got the thing that they're passionate about, but they're either struggling with imposter syndrome or struggling to get the traction that they want, or kind of feel like they're doing the same stuff every day, but not really getting any traction?
Well, if you keep doing the same thing and don't change anything, then nothing will change. So you've got to do something. If it's not working, you have to change it. So then the question is, well, what is it you're going to go and change? And you may as well go and speak to somebody who can give you some ideas on that, because the very fact that your idea isn't working means you're out of ideas. So you need to go and get some help with that and to get out of that circular process, and fast as well, because all that's happening is burning cash and it's not working.
And then my final question, Tim, is if you something that really stood out to me is like this kind of thinking about the business from what you want and how that kind of gives you clarity. If you could go back to Tim before you'd done that, or another business owner in a similar position, how would you sell that process to them of thinking about yourselves first? Because I think a lot of business owners are very skeptical to do that. Like, well, yeah, that can come down the line. All I've got to do at the moment is make this work. So how would you, being as somebody going through that process and reaping the rewards of it, how would you sell it to somebody that might be skeptical?
What's the worst that can happen, and why would you not try? Would be the first. I think my opening kind of offer. To be a little bit more pointed would be, how on earth do you think the best way to do this if you've not got expertise in it? So yeah, if you're not taking a software product to market before, how is it you think you know it better than someone who's done it before, or help businesses scale, or just get set up or find some structure, find some strategy. So yeah, if you ask that question, it just doesn't make any sense at all that you think that you can do it by yourself. Some things we can do by ourselves, coming up with an idea, assembling a team,
Yep.
driving forward. But then the further along you get, the more specialist it needs to become as you get towards the sort of pointy end of it all.
Yeah, brilliant. And what's your predictions for Daisium?
Stellar, I think. I don't know. I'm not really one for predictions and sales forecasts because everything just changes so much. But all I do know is that whenever we go to places like Monaco, Zurich, Dubai, London, and talk about a product, people say, "Wow, this is amazing." Now we're talking to enterprises, and we spoke to an immigration lawyer who said, "For 25 years of my career, this has always been a problem, and now you've just walked into my office and you appear to have solved it." So when you hear things like that, you just think, well, if we just keep going, good things will come of it. So yeah, that's who knows where it will go. But
love it. I'm excited to play this back to you when you're sitting in your ivory tower.
Well, yeah, good stuff. Well, yeah, it's all because of the likes of yourself who have their little pieces to play in it and little parts to play that it comes together to make the thing that it is. So it's very much a team effort.